Welcome back to Matchnik Garage. Today we are working on this new to me 2007 F550 Rollback tow truck. It's got a lot of miles and we've got some things to go over. But before we get on what we're doing today, let's take a quick rock around and I'll show you just how bad picking this truck up could have gone. Alright, let's take a quick peek at what we've got going on here. And I do apologize if there's any wind noise. It's a little windy today. But, like I said, this is a 2007 Ford F550 tow truck flavor. It is supposed to be four-wheel drive. We'll get into that. We got a Century rollback bed. It's got all the features that, a more modern truck has. The wheel lift on the back here that somebody made unusable, so we'll have to fix that. Apparently somebody decided, welding a receiver on here terribly was the correct answer. But we've got a good base to start with. Now, this truck has 570,000 miles on the odometer. So it's got all the issues that come along with that, Tires are not great. These suckers are just rotten. I don't know if you can see how much that is. And these 19.5s, when they blow out, you're damaging something. It's got some bent wheels. There's at least 3 out of 4 on the back are bent. This box has been replaced, but original box is 49 inches and they put a 48-inch box in there and just squeezed everything together. So we'll probably ignore that, but you can see in there that they just, there's the big gap there. So they just pulled the sides out, and all that's going to do is just break the bolts out on the sides here. So we probably should address it. I've already taken most of the lettering off. There was lettering over the top of other lettering on top of really poor paint job. I got here and the paint started coming off, and clearly this is a different fender with a terrible paint job. Front tires, they look good. They are new. You can still see where the nubs were. The big problem with them is they are recapped tires. I do not believe by US DOT standards that you can have a recap on the steer of a commercial motor vehicle. So those are going to come off. 6 of them came with the truck because they're like, oh yeah, new tires come with. It's like, well, they're not new, they're recaps. So we're going to take those off, sell those, because I don't want recaps on here at all. Big old flag on the hood. I like that, but it's old, it's weathered. Again, it's on top of other vinyl, on top of painted on pinstriping. It just needs to come off. This is as far as I got in an hour, so I've probably got 3-4 more hours just to get that off of there yet. If anybody knows a good way to get vinyl off of paint, drop a comment down below. I tried heat gun, but maybe it was just a little too cold. I just couldn't keep the hood warm enough, and just little pieces were coming off at a time. I've got one of those eraser wheels, and that's what did most of this. But I think I paid $40 for that eraser wheel, and I don't know that the one wheel I've got is going to get the rest of this off of here. So you got a way, drop it down below. Luckily enough, wood windshield is not broken. Everything I buy seems to have a broken windshield, so we got lucky there. You know, there's some dents and dings, and you know, it's got a lot of miles, so I don't care about that. But in overall, it's decent shape. So this box we'll have to do something with, because this right now is a structural bungee cord. Without that, the door just falls open. And if I contact any of the parts people for the bed, they want like $100 per latch, and it's not worth doing. So you can see over here we've got two different tires from the other side. This one's junk, that one's junk. Like I said, more bent wheels. So frame's in decent shape, except for one spot that we'll get to in the future. All the controls do work. Everything works. I did drive my car to go look at this. Obviously, I drove there. A prerequisite to me buying a tow truck was I needed to be able to load my car onto it and drive home. If I couldn't do that, way more of a project than I wanted. I've had tow trucks in the past. You know, my wife and I owned a towing company up right until 2020, and all of that happened, and we kind of had to turn our business in a different direction, because you know, not as many people were driving. So we're just getting back into it. Our new location, I thought it was a good idea. So here we are, but now I didn't really want a project, but now I've got a project. So let's open the driver's door here, and I'll show you the interior. It's rough. You know, we got zip ties, screws, wires hanging out with a, you know, battery gauge just right on the dash there. This is nice because the dash doesn't have one. But this stays on 100% of the time and just drains the batteries down. So we'll have to do something with that. You know, center console is, you know, it's been reupholstered with some self-tapping screws, and it's junk. So I don't know. I think I've seen this piece that you can buy new, because this seems to happen on all of the ones that I've looked at. But I haven't found the fold open center console top. So maybe I just need to get a whole center seat there, but I need to be able to fold it up and put two customers in here, and not just have nothing there. So, but everything else is pretty decent. You know, that's pushed in, so we'll have to figure out why that is. I noticed this earlier is just kind of being held in with the headlight switch button. You know, we've got all the panels. I was just looking at all the horrendous wiring in here. You know, that's terrible. This is the shift indicator that is always broken on these Super Duties. So, like I said, it is four-wheel drive, but it doesn't work. Let's check that out. So I knew I was going to have issues, and the guy did tell me that these parts were missing when I bought it. So let's get under here and I'll show you what's missing. He says, oh yeah, it just needs these parts. So check this out. Go over to the wheel end here, and there's something missing on the outside of that axle shaft tube. And then you go to the other side, missing there too, and somebody just, you know, cut it off. And that wobbles more than I think it should, but I have no idea. It's just cut off. So there's no axle shafts. in this front differential, and there's no front drive shaft. He says, oh, you just have to put axle shafts in it. I said, okay. I said, the problem with that is both of the axle tube ends have been open for who knows how long. I bet you the bearings in the center are garbage. So basically, when you have to buy the parts, the lockout hubs are gone, I believe. Or this one might be there, and I know that one's gone. By the time you buy all those parts, you might as well have just bought a whole axle. So I've got to figure out gear ratio, keep an eye out for those. Now, I was told that all the Super Duties front axles would fit in, but the 250s and 350s might be a slightly different width, but also the axle shafts are smaller on a 250 and 350 versus a 450 and 550. So I think just keep my eye out for a good deal on it's a Dana Super 60 is what they call it. That's out of a 450 or 550. That was a 05 to 05 to like 2012, which is 10 lug. Just something I keep an eye out, but it works just fine in two-wheel drive. I'm not concerned. So let me show you what I found and caused this truck just to sit here, because I was like, I don't want to burn it to the ground. So we go back under the front here, and I was just, looking around, and then I came across this. This is the positive battery cable right to the starter. And there's no insulation left. I don't know if we can get in there and you can see, it's just, there's nothing left of it. It's half broke away. Half the wires are frayed out. And there's just nothing left of it. And it's like, well, okay, you steer all the way to the right, and this steering stabilizer, if I can get my hands in here, comes over and rubs right on the inside of here. And, this is unfused straight from the battery. You're asking for it to just start arcing out. And the only reason I think it hasn't is the end of the shock has bushings on both ends, isolating it from the chassis ground. So I saw that and just disconnected the batteries and said, not starting it again until we get some battery cables on it. So with that being as bad as it is, and these battery cables, if I can get the hood open here, they're original, but they are not untouched. And what I mean by that, this one somebody has put an end on and, crimped the cable insulation into the terminal there. So that's probably a poor connection. They just have the other cables hanging off it. The grounds still have these factory Ford terminal ends, which are terrible to begin with. These are some other grounds. I bet you this goes to like ECM or what have you. Those have just been spliced together, and they're not shrink wrapped or nothing. It's just a cheap connector. This, going from driver's side battery, passenger side battery, is supposed to ride down here, but it's been shortened. So it's just been sitting up there for whoever knows how long. And I'd imagine it got shortened here when somebody did a good job and put this nice through connector on, but it's short. We want it to run in the right spot. We're also missing some plastics and stuff like that. This side, the body ground that comes off the main cable is all frayed. Terminal end on the ground side is all squeezed together and damaged. This is the end and where all the fusible links are, and that's not a great connection. Maybe the connection isn't so bad, but I'd like to see some shrink wrap on there. So basically, all of the battery cables are trash, especially that positive cable down on the frame that goes to the starter. You know, I mean, it's got juice all the time, and it's just asking to burn this truck to the ground on the side of the road. Hopefully not with a customer's car on the back, because then you're just going to watch the whole thing go up in flames. And this wouldn't be the first truck or second or third that I've owned that either was on fire or was a total loss because it was on fire, or, you know, I bought it and took the bed off of a truck that was on fire to make another one whole. So I've never had one burned to the ground, but I've owned a few of these F-Series that were either on fire or a total loss. So with that being said, I was just not going to take that chance. And I was like, well, I know there's battery kits available, cable kits available, I should say. So I went to custombatterycables.com and I talked to this company. There's their card there. Pretty decent product, I think. You know, they give you all new cable ends. These are the nice military style where they clamp on, and you have a second bolt to actually attach your cables to. Give you some extra clips to hook the smaller cables to. All the zip ties, and these are the special ones that clip into body holes. Cable end protectors. But then they've got all of these nice big cables, crimped, wrapped. You know, we got red for our positive one. They're nice, you know, adhesive shrink wrap on the ends. You know, they're all labeled where they go. This one's battery to battery, battery positive to starter. You know, got the proper end on there for the starter. Here's the passenger side ground. You know, and it goes from battery to fender, and battery to engine, and an engine to frame. It's all really nice and labeled. Driver side negative, right from the battery down to the frame. So this, it was a little bit more money than I think I probably could have bought the materials and crimped them all together. But this was the easy way to just be like, yep, that's what I want. And get everything in one package, cut to the right length, you know, with the corrugated protective tubing on it, stuff like that. So I've done enough talking now. Let me get some cables ripped out here, and we will, I think I'm going to start with the bad one. And so at least that gets done for sure. And we'll take a look at that, compare the lengths to make sure that's accurate, and go from there. All right. Well, I got the positive battery cable out, got the negative cable out from the passenger side. It's a little worse than I thought it was going to be, so even better that I'm getting to this. Let's have a look. For all intents and purposes, this thing should have just burnt to the ground before I even knew it was for sale. I don't really understand how it didn't. Let me show you why. So this is that bad spot that we were talking about. I mean, you can see right there, there is some metal melted to it, or maybe that's a giant chunk of copper wire that melted at some point. It's pretty bad. And then inside this boot, you can see it's, I hope you can see, that's bare wire there. And this bracket was around there. So it should have just been arcing out on this bracket. So hopefully we can get something. I mean, I can't get this off and then onto the new cable, which is fine, but we'll probably wrap a hose a chunk of hose or something around it, and then secure it in here so it's not just bouncing in that bracket. But then we come up towards the battery side, and I took some more wrap off, and there is another 3 inches that's just exposed, and it's also spliced together right here. So either this whole connection going to the other battery was from something else that they just spliced onto here and cut the end off over there to length, and maybe it's spliced together under here. I don't know. There's multiple pieces going on here. So we've got just bad connections, bad wire, another bad connection, more bad wire, and then it comes down here to the starter. So I've got our new cable laid out here. I've got to strip this loom back, get it all out to the right length, and then this is the starter signal wire that gets wrapped in that same loom all the way up here and then branches off, and they were nice enough to put a specific plug on for the signal wire, so that was able to come out easy. So, and then I've got some new loom. I'll get it all wrapped up nice again. So that's the positive cable. The negative cable on the passenger side, I showed you this where it's just kind of coming apart going to the body ground on the fender, but then you went a little further and it's rubbed through there and compromised, and that's only going to get worse. Down here, this is what went from the engine block to the frame. It almost looks like it got hot at one point, or it's just falling apart. That end looks fine. So I've got the new ground cable over here. We'll get that put on, and we'll get this all loomed up and back in the truck. Alright, so we got the cables in. We got negative here, positive, starter signal wire, like I said, all wrapped up with new loom. That plugs in over here somewhere. We got our body ground on. I just gotta take the tag off yet. I'm gonna get the positive connected over here. We'll run our new positive that comes over here, and I just went and stuck this negative on right away down to the frame, which is down there, and those are not easy to get to. You can take your fender liners out, try to get to them, or I know you'll be able to get to them that way, but that's like a lot of work for just 2 bolts. So I just use this straight down from the top through the impact on it, and then going back together, you're just kind of feeling around in the dark. So there really wasn't much to show there. So I'm gonna go and get the positive cable that goes between the 2 batteries. I got this end, got some nice adhesive shrink wrap on there. I believe Harbor Freight calls it marine grade. No, it's shrink wrap that seals itself. I use it on everything. So I'm going to do that, get that battery cable here. I believe these broken clips are the old clips for it. We'll get those out, pop the zip ties in there, and we'll try to get this thing fired back up. It's been sitting here for probably 3 weeks. Haven't started it. Hopefully the batteries still have a charge in them. It sat all last winter and the batteries died, and the guy just jump started it, and then it kept starting after that. So hopefully they're still good. So I'll get that together and I'll bring you back in. Well, we got it all together. Got this all zip tied nice with those fancy zip ties they give you right in the holes where it's supposed to be. Over here, that's one of those accessory clips for the eyelets that are too large for the 3/8 bolt. Put those on here. Put a new shrink terminal on there. I know it's grounds, but I like the adhesive shrink terminals. I feel like it helps hold the wire into the crimp. So got this bent just so it kind of sits comfortable in there. This side's a little more busy. Got another one of those deals here for the fusible links. Battery cross there, all the things. I did forget to put the boots on there, the covers, but you know, I've never had them before, and if I end up having to switch the batteries out, I'll just put them on then, because I don't throw anything away. So let's go see if this thing starts. You know, I picked it up, I drove it home, and started it the next morning, and it started fine. Unloaded my car, parked it here, and it's been sitting. So it's kind of, there's still kind of a lot of unknown. All right, that's a good sign. My gauge on here showing just over 11 volts. I don't know if you can see that. 569,000 miles. You know, but everything has been changed. Runs perfect. You know, not too smoky. You probably can't even see it in the camera. Runs good though. I got to get the rest of the air filter box here. You know, this half's all broken, the clips are broken, and I'm missing the other half. So just to recap, you know, these new battery cable kits, it's a really cheap way if your cables are pretty bad. You know, it's a good way to burn your rig right to the ground. And, you know, we've all seen them burnt spots on the side of the road. You know, well, something was on fire there. And it's in this scenario when I could have a customer's car on the bed, and if there's an engine fire, it shuts down. I've got no way to get the customer's car off the bed. I know that's what insurance is for, but nobody ever wants to use insurance, so I'd just rather, you know, do this kit. I think it was a little over 300 bucks for all of the cables and all the things it came with. So I think I would have had a hard time finding those pieces, and, you know, between the time and effort to put it all together, I think it was well worth the money. So if you like this video, I've got more to come on this truck. I need to get it in service. You know, it's a lot of money for a truck to just sit there and do nothing. So go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and in the next video, we'll tackle the next project. Thanks for watching.